Hello, I'm Chris Gubber. Welcome to my channel. It's a philosophy channel, art, all that sort of thing. So I usually do videos where I just, often very off the cuff, stream of consciousness. I've gone outside today, thought it's a nice day. Go outside, record outside, because it's lovely weather. But I want to do a video today, very just speculative video really, talking about AI again, and this is going to be highly speculative. After all, I do have a big beard and look a bit like a wizard, but I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know the future. I can just make interesting, maybe speculative predictions about it, which are, as to whether they'll come true or not remains to be seen. But anyway, before I talk about like a few, I want to like split it into two, so I do like sort of a doomer-esque scenarios, sort of more pessimistic, and but also trying to explore what optimistically it might changes might occur. I'll preface this by saying I'm not really an expert on AI. I do understand a lot of the underlying logic, a lot of the underlying principles involved in it, but I am no expert. Like, I've looked into cybernetics in the past, all all that sort of going way back, the theory of that. I know what Python is, vaguely know what a neural network is and how it functions, but not necessarily going to be coming from a place of being an expert in how they're developed. All that said, let's get on with it. So I'll start with the doom-laden scenarios. So obviously it's having a bit of a disruptive effect. To be honest, like the main area it's been having a disruptive effect has been in image making, with Mid-Journey and the image diffusion systems and programs that come up, as well as ChatGPT, of course. So I've already done a separate video talking exactly about how I think it will affect art and illustration and that sort of thing, so I'm not going to rehash all the points or explorations I made in that video. But okay, in a doom-laden, utterly pessimistic vision of it, I think obviously it will affect massively the artists who traditionally would have been generating these images, and it'll basically put them out of a job. So in terms of image making, advertising, even branding, graphic design, comic books maybe, and any sort of reproductive art, even for movies, I think it's going to have quite a profound effect as well. I think we will see in the next few years a mass proliferation of generative art. Obviously all the big tech companies are starting to go into this now. Generative AI, which generates games or apps or whatever on the fly. There's already been I don't know how tied it is in, and it's something that's worrying me as well, because I have a background programming. It's basically the main thing that I've been able to do for money, and now it seems like there's actually a lot of software engineers are getting fired en masse from big tech companies. So as to whether we're replaceable, that is a bit worrying, because it's really the only thing I can do that is a marketable skill. So if I can't do it, I don't know, I just have to get a hard hat and go down a mine or something, I guess. I don't know, I'll just become I'll take the literally me meme to its logical conclusion. I'll become an android and kill other androids for money. Live the Ryan Gosling dream to the max, and I'll get a gun. I can actually start blasting other robots for money. I'm joking, of course, but yeah, it is worrying in some respects, because that was always a safe career, obviously, in the past. To be a software engineer or programmer, that was a thing. You had a very good trajectory in terms of your future. So yeah, in the Doom Lane scenario 1, we get like consumer culture on steroids, sort of accelerated consumer culture on steroids, with we like a bit like the Wall-E thing. We all become these fat fucking consumers, just consuming a bunch of content that's generated by machines, and we become lazy. We stop being really human beings. So obviously, the way that the world has been organised, the entertainment, the media, everything's become more sophisticated. Obviously, the development of television, radio, and now it's getting to a point where it generates itself, almost like it creates itself out of nothing. Whereas before, you'd obviously have to have a team of people, creatives, usually just creating these media, right? But the media landscape's changed. And like at the extreme end of it, yeah, I can see. I mean, this is, like I said, highly speculative. I'm not saying this is actually going to happen. But human beings become like, even David Foster Wallace talked about this quite a lot, how we're so passive in regards to our consumption of media, and it has become so easy just to watch. I mean, I do it myself, even I'm not any better than anyone else here, just to watch hours and hours of content, a lot of which is just meaningless all the time. But yeah, if that process gets sped up even more, obviously YouTube and user-created media was a big game changer, because instead of it coming from production companies, it opened up the creative landscape, if you will. And for a while, it was amazing. Before you had all the censorious nature of the big tech companies, sort of like just usually cancelling or fucking up anything that was even vaguely controversial. But anyway, that's just sort of something else. But I won't go too much off on that, because it's a whole other Pandora's box, if you will. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's one potentially negative effect. That we just basically become really stupid. We no longer read. Not even like, you don't need to read like all the classics and everything to be an intelligent person. I don't even think intelligence should really be measured that way. Obviously, it comes in lots of different. People have different types of intelligence, but book smart people, who are traditionally the people you find in like academic institutions, I think they're already quite worried, because you can get ChatGPT, for example, to just generate an essay, which, spoiler alert, that's not actually thinking. So I think that's one terrible thing. I think that's maybe one of the worst potential outcomes of this technology really advancing fast and getting to a really extreme level, is that for students who are now studying now, especially if it's like philosophy, creative writing, whatever, they will just not actually learn how to think. They won't actually look, they won't actually read the source material of and yeah, like, I know I've been a student, I'm studying computer science, but it's a bore sometimes. You don't really want to study something at the time where it just feels like I really do have to read this stuff and analyse it and try and make something new out of it. If you actually want to look at the actual definition, though, of something, take something like this, it can be disputed and everything, but the idea of genius, that is usually something new emerging from someone thinking about something in a completely new way, but it also relies on existing information that exists out there. For example, someone like Einstein, he took information that was already out there and saw a new perspective on it, which did actually turn out to be correct after experimental analysis and all that. But he was still working, though he did develop some new mathematics, he had to have that prior knowledge to create something new out of it. Now, if you're a student at university and you just go, I'll just get the computer to do that bit, I'm not going to bother, just automate it away. That's not intelligence. You're not being intelligent there, you're not even being creative. You're just telling a machine to just regurgitate this information to you. Now, I'm not a Luddite. I think this has got many potential good things as well. Like, it's like the internet on steroids, right? But even with a sort of, it's not sentient, but a sort of ability to pattern match with it, which is very powerful, you know, like you can auto. So there is the automotive aspect of it is incredible, right? And it is impressive. But if the human race is going to rely on it too much, that I think could be a huge, massive cultural, intellectual issue. Now, I get it, like, not everybody is the intellectual type. They don't want to. Not everybody's into reading philosophy or reading the classics or finding out about art and reading, you know, poetry or whatever, and that's fine. But obviously, if you are going to have places where information is gathered, knowledge is gathered, repositories of knowledge, archives of knowledge, then it actually is important that you know about the ways that we systematize and analyze knowledge and try and create new knowledge out of it, or create novelty. Actually, that's more basically what I'm saying. And obviously, since these models are basically trained on information that's already out there, you could argue, well, it is doing that, but it's just automating that process. But again, you're not actually engaging your brain, you're not actually engaging your intellect, you're not actually systematizing knowledge in your own original way or processing it. Obviously, writing is the end point of systematizing and analyzing any piece of any knowledge, any data, if you will. But again, you are not going to have you're not going to innovate any knowledge set if you don't actually understand it, the depth complexity of it, right? So, and like I was saying this to someone today, it's like, I already have big worries about people's critical thinking abilities and abilities to be like in an intelligent way skeptical about things. I already worry about that in terms of like the mass culture. So I think potentially, yeah, what if it gets worse? Like we just, just let the machines do all that. Part of me just finds it disappointing. You know, it's not that hard. Just read some books. If you really want to, like, if you want to find out about, I'm being blasé there. There isn't only one there isn't a one way to knowledge, and that isn't just to read books, obviously. But, you know, we've got the internet, we've got many different forms. Wikipedia even can be useful, despite what many lecturers would say. So you're like a sort of top level understanding. It's not that bad. Okay, so I don't know. But I think one of my main worries is that basically it'll just make people lazy, intellectually lazy. And we're already in an era where people are, I think, they're less trustworthy at of information for a start. So bringing a bunch of AI generated fake news just to add to the shit pile of already existing fake news that is generated, that's going to be fun. Then add in deep fakes, so you can't even tell if something's real or not. You've got a sort of like Baudrillard, simulation and simulacra, gone mental. So that's the pessimistic side of it. Okay, I'll try and find some sort of silver lining to all this. I think for many someone like if you're making games, actually, I think it's very useful. If you're a game developer, and I am an indie game developer, I make games often by myself, very rarely with others in collaboration, sometimes, but usually self-directed projects, right? Now, art creation for those projects was always a bugger. You'd either have to hire somebody to do it, or you just have to spend a lot of time doing it yourself, which I've done in the past. When I did my Noir Nights project, I did all the artwork myself. It added like at least 2 months onto the development process because I had to do it myself. Look, I was happy to do that, I was try it out, but it's quite a process to do that. So obviously, Midjourney and ChatGPT or whatever is good in that sense, especially if you want to try out an experimental idea. Obviously, the artist don't really benefit from it very much. So there is that part, which is bad. But I mean, if you're a game dev emerging and you just want to test something out for asset generation, it might have a use there, which is quite good. It also could potentially just open up more avenues for more complexity with a collaboration between machines and human beings. There is actually a silver lining to all this. So, just off the top of my head, imagine you got some mad composer, right? That's a really good electronic music composer, but they figure out a way that they can interface in real time with an AI generative sound machine. That opens up a whole world of sound potentially, composition, everything else, live performance, or even a real-time video synthesis thing, right? For live gigs. Again, opens up a whole new world of visual possibilities. So, look, I'm not a Luddite with all this question, and I think like I mentioned a few times before, I'm using Midjourney in my own indie game dev. I'm working on an indie game, which I'm using Midjourney to develop comic style art. So the positives as well as the negatives. But yeah, I think I'll leave this here. It's 50 minutes. Probably didn't go too much into the optimistic side of reflections on it, but again, like I said, this is highly speculative thoughts just from the ether, really. So anyway.